And when I was in post-production on Beau is Afraid, I went back to the script, which I kind of wrote really quickly in 2020. And before I really started rewriting it, I wanted to go to New Mexico and drive around the state, go to different counties and talk to different sheriffs, go to small towns and talk to mayors, police chiefs, public officials. I went to pueblos. I just tried to get as broad a picture of the political climate, but also just the landscape, while at the same time like spending a lot of time with as many people as I could. And that was really, really useful because the movie kind of got away from me at that point. And I also found it really interesting because it challenged a lot of the biases that I had. And I'm on the left, and but while I was writing this, and even while I shot it, Biden was president. And I found that, and the New Mexico is interesting because it's a blue state, but most of the small towns are red. And the governor, who's is a figure of controversy over there, and is a Democrat. And I found that a lot of the, for instance, like the Democratic mayors of these small towns, gave me a lot of like talking points, and were very kind of, they were happy with the status quo and were very dismissive of anything that would contradict their talking points. And I found a lot of those conversations like pretty dull. And then I found that a lot of the conversations I was having with the people on the right, they were like really upset, and they were like full of conviction, and they were saying things that I didn't believe, but I also found them to be more compelling in that particular moment. And so that really helped. That helped because the experiment at that time was, I'm going to focus the movie on a person that would be maybe more challenging for me.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, and maybe, I'm not sure how much of it was in sort of that original draft, how much of it was saved by this research trip, but the sort of, this dynamic between Joe and Ted that you wanted to explore. I mean, like, you had that sort of showdown in the middle of the street, but, and I was interested in how these sort of two characters got shaped and how their dynamic did.
And I'll just say one more thing about why I found the people compelling that I did. It's because they felt so ignored and condescended to, and it like really it had become a complex. And anyway, so that was something that found its way in as well. And so you're asking, well,
Yeah,
that dynamic. Well, that was already there in the script, the feud between the sheriff and the mayor, but there's one sheriff that I met who I found really, really interesting. Sheriff of a vast county with a very small population, and I knew Joaquin was gonna find him interesting. But if you put somebody in front of Joaquin and say, like, this person's interesting, he'll be like, fuck off, no he's not. So I introduced him to a few people, knowing that he would just kind of settle on the really interesting one. And so even Joaquin's like wardrobe is based on the way that guy dressed, and he came to the set several times as a consultant. Like he showed up at the crime scene. Remember when he goes, DRT right here, remember that? DRT means dead right there. The sheriff, the sheriff gave us that. I really liked that. And I knew nobody would understand, so I liked being able to explain what that means. And I mean, there were just so many interesting stories that I picked up. But for instance, that sheriff that I loved, he had a feud with a mayor, with the mayor of the biggest town in his county. And that mayor, they were actually both kind of on the right, but that mayor was, he, like recently, I don't know what's the word, inducted. He recently won, and before he won, he went as just like a citizen to town hall. He had some grievance that he wanted to air, and he had a gun on his hip, and they said, "Sorry, but you can't be in here with a gun." And so they made him leave, and so then he decided, "I'm going to run for mayor, and I'm going to run on the platform of you can't come to town hall without a gun." And so he's mayor now. So you gotta, if you want to go to town hall, you need some heat. Anyway, and I went to his house, and that place was insane. Really interesting house. More guns than I've ever seen in my life. He was a veteran, so there's a lot of a lot of medals and stuff like that, and then there are a lot of framed posters of lesbians kissing.
Fascinating. Truly. Nothing else to say. Going back to sort of, your Twitter investigation, I think one of the fascinating things about this movie is how you thought about putting screens on screen. And I was wondering, about the process of, how you thought about, obviously this is a movie that deals so much with the internet and the way we're looking at the internet constantly on our phones, on our computers. And when did you sort of start to come up with the ideas of how you wanted to depict this, which has notoriously been something that people have found challenging?
Well, for me, that was the whole movie. It's people living in the internet. And so, if anything, I just wanted to find a way to have it not become like background or phones are in everything, but it's somebody I don't know, text. It's like, bing, is cute. And I wanted it to be I wanted there to be a menace. I wanted it to make you sick with the phones. I don't know. I feel like this moment is so weird and awful. But it's wallpaper, and so it's very easy to get used to it and to forget how weird it is. We all know it's weird, but it's really weird. And we've been changed by it. I can't think in the same way that I was able to think a couple of years ago. But something's coming, and it's gonna get weirder, and we're gonna get changed in ways that we can't even fathom. And so I don't know, that I wanted that to somehow be just in the movie, in the bones of the film. And the movie is, I would say, for me, principally about a data center being built just outside of town. Good. See, yeah, it is. But that's the bad guy. That's the thing that's actually really happening. Anyway.
Well, I do have to ask, now that you brought it up, how did you come up with the name Solid Gold Magikarp?
Well, it's a Pokemon.
Yeah.
So Solid Gold Magikarp was a phrase that if you typed it into some of these older language models, I think specifically ChatGPT, it might have been 3, the system would go haywire and wouldn't know what to do with it. And so that's just an inside joke for the people who are ushering in this god that will ruin everything. Or save, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's gonna save everything. That's I don't know. Good.
I wanted to ask about how, about ramping up to the conclusion and sort of the not the conclusion actually, your gunfight. And I was fascinated by the staging of it and how you, I mean, sort of just technically how you sort of thought about pulling that off, your extended gunfight throughout the town.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're going to make a movie about America, you're going to need too many guns. So, but are you asking like how what was the ideas behind it, or how did we execute it?
I was more interested in how you executed it, and especially, you were shooting in Truth and Consequences, New Mexico?
Yeah, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, which used to be called Hot Springs, but then a game show in the 50s called Truth or Consequences held a national competition for any town that wanted to compete to be named after the show. So they won. Really interesting place. Well, the script I had written into the script, basically what that scene would be, but I held off on shot listing or storyboarding any of it until we found the town. And then certain things weren't in the script, but came out of necessity. Like my favorite thing, I was basically like a fix, because at a certain point, he's going down that hill with all the cacti, and the idea was that he was going to get to a cliff edge, which was there, and he's going to get shot, so he jumps and falls onto onto a table, which would have been fine, and then he would have gone through. He still was going to go through the museum, but he was going to have to go through the back, and that was not safe because the rigging guys, the stunt guys, the earth wouldn't hold. So I had to figure out something else, and that's how I came to him going through the roof of the museum. So sometimes it's good that you can't. I like that. I think that's funny. But it was really kind of a matter of, once we knew what the place was, to just walk it, just walk around, and it's well, I know he has to get to wherever he's going to get stabbed in the head, and then and with the idea being, where are these people, just kind of finding the areas that feel the most exposed, but that also have the most possible vantage points for them. Yeah. And so that, and I knew that I really wanted to use that parking lot. That was the most cinematic spot in the town, so I knew I wanted to kind of get there.
This is obviously your second movie with Joaquin, and you obviously told a very funny story earlier about sort of working with Joaquin, and so I was wondering, sort of how your working relationship evolved from Beau to this with Joaquin, and sort of how and discovering sort of who Joe Cross would be with him.
Well, yeah, on Beau, we had to kind of find our method. And Joaquin is somebody who likes to rehearse a lot. Joaquin surprised me in Beau because I always kind of felt okay, this guy's spontaneous. It's got to be fresh every time, and he's gonna improvise. And that's not what he does at all. He really wants to work it out. He really wants to work it out in advance. But the problem is, and this is where he wasn't surprising, if he does work it out in advance and it just kind of gets stuck there, or then it's we're really fucked, because he's not going to do it again. So I found, that Joaquin on that film and on this one asked a lot of questions and wanted to go over the script a lot. And on Beau, I think at first I thought, okay, I have to come up with answers for him, and it became kind of clear no, we need to find the question that like is the most interesting and then keep that alive so that on the day that question is still kind of urgent and there are like possibilities. And so I think that's the way that we tend to work is we talk through things and we think like what's happening here and how do we keep it from being like just like a scene in a movie. And with this one, it was very I think he was pretty lost until he met that sheriff. He really didn't know what to do with this guy, in a good way, because when he doesn't know what to do, he gets all agitated and huffy and threatens to not do it. But it's leading to it's basically just being in the lab, right? And so once he met him, that was like a light bulb for him. Yeah.
We have to wrap up soon, but I wanted to ask about Firework. How did Firework become your song of choice for this showdown?
Well, for a long time, I was using Jay-Z and Alicia Keys' Empire State of Mind, which I was obsessed with. I thought it was so funny that the whole scene played to like a New York anthem. It also just felt like exactly what Ted Garcia would be listening to. Like it just felt like it's like he's like 10 years too late. But anyway, I couldn't get Jay-Z to watch it. I think he was going through something. I never got a no, but I didn't get anything. And so at the last minute, we had to sort of reassess and went through like many songs, and Firework was the best. The one like requisite, like the one thing that we had to have there was it had to like be of the culture, and it had to be something you've heard too many times. And Firework is good because it's very bassy. It's like very strong bass, and if you crank the bass, it makes you really queasy. So we cranked the bass.
Well, thank you so much, Ari. Thank you all for being here. Ari has to run to another Q&A, so if you wouldn't mind staying in your seats, but give him a big round of applause. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.